Hey everyone, welcome to my ALIV Financial Wellness Session. My name is Nathaniel and I'll be your host for this evening and also your lecturer as well. This is the last session of a series for the financial wellness with the ALIV team. I'm excited to be here with you, and my topic this evening is on debt management. So I'm hoping that you can tag a friend, tag someone who you know who might be interested, need help, or even tag some of your family members. I'm sure you're going to get a lot out of this session today. So, without further ado, let's get started. As mentioned, we're going to talk about debt management. And in talking about debt management, my hope for you this evening will be that you have a better understanding of your current financial situation, understand what relevant information strategies you need to adopt or embrace. Have hope for whatever you're in now and know that you can transform that situation to your desired outcome. The importance of long-term planning, and last but not least, a debt management strategy that suits you. We're going to discuss a myriad of things, not limited to methods to monitor and help you evaluate your debt load, solutions in dealing with excess debt, the various loan repayment plans that are available, the debt management strategies, organizations, and professionals that help you manage debt. And there will be ways for you to manage and align yourself with your financial goals. Last but not least, have debt exit methods that will help you reduce the risk of borrowing. Now, I'm very interactive, so I need you to do two things for me right now. The first thing I need you to do is hit that share button. And if you're not subscribed with My Alive, you need to subscribe to get content like this on a daily basis. Plus, be aware of the great deals that they have in regards to their phone services. Now, let's get to the presentation. I need you or anyone who's watching this feed right now to share with me. Type it inside the chat. Type it on this link right now. What is the significance of April 30th, 2018? What happened on this historic day in the Bahamas? There's two specific answers I'm looking for. What historic moment happened on this day, April 30th, 2018? Trust me, many of you will be shocked who may not know the answer. And if you think you know the answer, just type that inside the chat for me. And don't forget to share, or tag someone who you know might need a little bit more information in the area of debt management. Now, I want to start this conversation or preference this conversation around debt, what it is, how we interact with it, and I think at the end of the day, you're gonna have a greater appreciation for the different schools of thought, the historical account, as we as Bahamians interact with that, and what you need to do to transform your situation. So let's start off. What is debt? Debt is owing any money to anybody for any reason. As simply put, debt is owing any money to any person for any reason. Debt, from the legal standpoint, is a financial liability or an obligation owed to a person, a debtor, or a creditor. In other words, debt is when someone borrows money and is responsible for paying that person or company who loaned them the money. There are different forms of that, and we need to understand the different forms and what all is included with those forms to have an appreciation that when you sit down with the financial institutions that you interact with, how you can better negotiate to get better terms, better rates. So one of the things I do want you to be aware of, not all debt is made the same. For example, some debt are tied to collateral and others is a one-time loan, but we'll go further into that. So let's talk about the ones that are tied to the word collateral. Well, we refer to that as secure debt, meaning that when you borrow money, that is backed by a physical asset. In other words, we call it collateral. And this is one of the greatest challenges here in our society. It is difficult for you or myself to borrow money for, say, a business or a particular asset in mind, unless you're coming to the table with some physical item or collateral which is almost equal in value or even more in value. Because at the end of the day, if you don't pay back that loan, that financial institution will have the right to acquire your asset as means of you not paying or defaulting on your loan. Then we have the unsecured debt. The unsecured debt is not backed by anything. A good example of it is your credit card. And with unsecured debt, where there is no collateral, you find that the interest rate is a lot higher as opposed to secure debt, where the interest rate is a lot lower. And then we talk about revolving debt. Revolving debt is simply an open line of credit where you can, in some cases, go back and keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. Yes, in some cases, they may have a limit. In other cases, they may not. But be mindful that you have the opportunity to go back and borrow that debt once you take it out. But the non revolving debt is a large lump sum, like a mortgage. Once you take it out, in order for you to get more, you would have to refinance or rewrite the terms of that contract. Keep in mind, there's an interest rate that is attached to it and a repayment plan. And the last and the most dangerous one, I call it the sneaky debt, along with my mentor. See, with the sneaky debt, it's almost like when you walk inside a store and they tell you that you can take that item. Companies like Amazon is famous for this. You can have that item and you just have to pay us back in installment payment plans. Well, I hear you, Nathaniel. I don't see anything wrong with that. I totally understand where you're coming from, but here's the thing. If you keep doing that, if you keep taking out items with this installment plan in place, slowly but surely you begin to discover that more of your cash at the end of the week or bi-weekly or even at the end of the month becomes less and less and less, all because you tied it up in all of these installment payment plans. So you will have more month than you will have money. You'll have a lot of things to show for it too. But I'll tell you this much. When you don't manage that correctly, everything that all of the debt that you use and all the items that you accumulated from that debt will be the first set of items you will sell or liquidate to satisfy those loans when you're running out of cash and you don't have a plan, or you're not liquid enough, or you don't have enough cash coming in to pay it back. And then, of course, the most popular, the debt consolidation. And debt consolidation, as in its simple term, is you take several of your debts, several of your loans, and you combine it into one payment. What it does, it lowers the monthly payment, it streamlines the payoff process. But in return, sometimes you find that the rate or the interest rate might be higher, or the time frame to pay it off may be even extended. And here's the thing you have to understand. In the midst of a debt consolidation, the number one thing that you have to focus on is how much cash you're going to take home, how much cash you can use, how much cash you can meet your monthly obligations in regards to food and utilities and shelter and transportation and that sort, dealing with kids, dealing with extended family members, even dealing with your personal development and advancement. You have to safeguard that, because at the end of the day, the less cash you have, the less you can respond to life. So the question is always asked, is that good or is it bad? And tell me about the consolidation. Should I pursue consolidation as my method of debt elimination or debt payoff? But we'll get to all of that in a second. One of the things I really want you guys to do is make sure you hit that share button, tag as much people in it. If you like what you hear so far, please tag people in it, share. Now, I raised a lot of questions in my last slide when I said that at the end of the day, everyone wants to know, is that good? Is it bad? Should we interact with it? Should we take out more? Should we use it? I followed this person and they say it's good. I followed that person. They say it's bad. Well, here in the Bahamas, it's difficult to get certain types of loans. Well, here in the Bahamas, it's easier to get certain types of loans. And I hear all of these common sayings everywhere I go, especially when it's time for me to do presentations. And what I have to do in most cases is put everything into perspective. What I want you to do is look at my screen. And I look at these two reports. It's two reports. The first report I want to point out to you was a report done by the Government of Public Policy Institute, the University of Bahamas, back in 2020. And they said the living wage, they have concluded, for a single individual is roughly somewhere around 2,600 a month. And if you're living in Grand Bahama, about 3,500 a month. My question to you, are you in agreement with that? Do you think that's right? Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's little bit or do you think it's enough? I'll say this, when I do presentations, there's a lot of mixed emotions. Some people say that's not enough, and some people say it is enough. I want to hear what you have to say. Type it right inside the chat for me. But one of the things I do want to draw your attention to, they said in New Providence, it take about $4,000 if you have a family of four in New Providence. But if you live in Grand Bahama, you need about 5,750 if you live in Grand Bahama. Do you think it's true? Is it enough? Especially with the rising of the prices in the food store, or just prices all around, the cost of living going up. Another thing I want to point to your attention. I follow this company a lot, and I've watched this particular report that they put out every year. The cost of living index by country. And they rank all of the countries on the list from the highest, most expensive destinations or countries to live in to the lowest. And for the last 4 years, the Bahamas falls within the top 10 most expensive countries to live in. So let's put that in perspective. If the report from the Government of Public Policy Institute of the University of the Bahamas is saying that you need about 2,600 to live off in New Providence and 35 as a single individual, if you're someone who have a family of four, 4,000, and in Grand Bahama, a family of four, need about 5,750. But what happens if you don't make that much? Then, when you look at this other report, we're saying that we, in the Bahamas, we reside in a country that is in the top 10 list for most expensive destinations in the world. It now puts a lot of things in perspective. It is difficult to acquire big ticket items in this country without interacting with debt. It is also difficult to acquire a medium cost of living without using debt to acquire those particular assets or to live a particular lifestyle. So what am I saying? It brings me back to this day and why this day is so significant. And I want to point out a couple of things before I talk about this particular day. I want to take you back. I want to take you back in history to tell you why this day is so significant. I want to go as far back as majority rule. See, when you go back to majority rule, a couple of things you will quickly understand. At the time of majority rule, the government, for the most part, was expanding. Many of the departments, ministries that we know of today were in their infancy stage back then. They were just starting off. They were just coming to fruition, meaning that persons were getting hired. In addition to that, within the course of the next 3 decades, our tourism industry and also our financial services started to grow, which created the middle class. So we're going to move from majority rule and we're going to move right into the 70s. And here's the thing. One of the things you have to acknowledge that persons or families that live within the over-the-hill communities as their sons and daughters went off to university, whether it's in the United States or the UK or a few who went off to Canada, as these individuals came back and they worked within tourism and financial services or even for the government in the public service, you begin to understand that they wanted a better quality of life for themselves. So what that mean? They started to expand. They moved and they started to buy homes beyond the over the hill community, and they went further east and they went further south. And as time progressed, we end up in the 70s, where I call it the credit era, where there was a particular, I won't call the name, a particular leading financial institution. Today, that financial institution does exist, but it's not in the commercial space as it once was. This was the leader in lending. I'm telling you, many of you who are probably over the age of 60 will know what institution I'm talking about. Back in the 70s, going into the 80s, I would say the cat, the dog, everybody was able to get a loan a little bit more freer. Another thing I want to point out to you during the time of majority rule, back then, we started to be exposed to other cultures. Why is this important? Why is this important to that? I'll tell you right now. We started to get exposed through to other cultures through the television and the expansion of the television and the expansion of the television actually being in color and more homes having access to watching foreign networks and foreign lifestyles. Individuals who went off to university, that is, they began to be exposed to foreign lifestyles as well. And as a result of that, every single individual wanted more. They wanted more for themselves and they wanted a better quality of life for their children. We moved from the families back in the majority rule era where one parent may have been able to go off to the United States, probably for the summertime, gather resources, live with a family member, and came back and brought the resources to moving into the 70s, going into the 80s, and even down to the 90s. If you were born in the 90s, you find that those families today have family vacation where everybody in the household goes off to vacation. Mostly back then in Florida, and today now we're transitioning all throughout the world in so many states and provinces. What am I saying? As time progressed, our appetites for certain lifestyles began to grow. The issue was our money in regards to income was not growing with it. Remember, back then, someone coming into the public service, I'm talking about in the 70s now, going into the 80s, someone coming into the public service was only making somewhere around $12,000 per annum, per annum, $15,000 per annum. And it took them years before they have the bigger salaries. They had to work their way up the ranks. Persons in tourism, they took home a whole lot more. That's why the taxi cab driver and the straw vendor could send 7 and 6 children off to school, pay for it, cash. We were dealing with a different type of economy. I'm not saying that all was booming. They did have periods of decline. But the most important thing I want to point out to you, by the time as the 80s roll around, financial services was at its all-time high. And in addition to that, tourism was roaring lion. We also have to acknowledge that there was an underground economy as well. In addition to that, we also have to acknowledge, like I said, the credit boom. You got the house, you went to a particular furniture store, and you got all of your furniture with the plastic on it, yes, with the plastic on it, from a particular store. You financed that. Cars, we got brand new cars off the lot back then, and we financed those things. Most of those persons who worked in the 70s, work in the 80s, work in the 90s will tell you most of what they acquired, big ticket items, were all financed. And this is when it went south. As the crackdown happened for the underground economy, as tourism started to take a dive and goes through its loops, financial services started to come under attack by the international community. The economy starts to constrict. And as a result of that, those persons who built homes that they couldn't afford no longer could have sustained it. Persons who could have just catch the plane and go to particular restaurants and come back just to say they went on the plane and eat at a particular restaurant. Back then, you have to remember, persons had a loose 2,000. And this economy today, you barely could find somebody with a loose $20. And it brings me to this moment. What is significant about this day? This is the day when the legislation for the Credit Reporting Act came into existence or was enacted. As a result of it, it allowed the central bank to select a credit bureau. And on this date, moving forward to our current day, the credit bureau had the power to collect your credit history and credit transaction starting from this day come forward. And I want to just point out a few things how we got here. Remember now, like I said, the 80s was great, going into the 90s. But there was a discussion of possibly all of the financial institutions having an exchange where they were able to see where their credit standing was at in regards to the various different entities. It was not in existence, but there was a discussion in the 90s. And then you move forward to 94, there was a potential proposal on the table to operate a lenders exchange. But keep in mind, like anything in the world, what speeds up these types of processes when there's a crisis. So when we had September 11th, then at that moment, there was a crackdown around the world where they wanted to look at frameworks to see how persons were dealing with terrorism financing or anti-terrorism financing. And one of the conversations that happened here locally was the conversation in regards to putting in place a credit bureau. And a committee was established by 2003. By 2008, during the mortgage crisis in the United States, which created a global recession, there was a second look. And with that second look, there was a number of assessments and feasibility studies that took place. And in the not long and the at the end of the day, the major objective that came out of those discussions was the fact that we needed a framework, and the government, along with the central bank, started to put the framework in place to create this legislation. And as you can see on my board, you see the process it took place. And as I said, on that date is when the credit bureau took form. You said, but why? Well, here's the interesting thing. In our old system, prior to that date, every independent financial institution under regulation had their own credit history, but they didn't have the credit history of the other bank or the other financial institutions. They had to look at debt service ratios. And the most important thing, it was an honor system, meaning that it was upon the person who wanted to borrow to provide proof in regards to what deductions they had. And that's why you have to provide your pay slip. That's why you have to show your salary deductions and those type of things. But as you know, we as Bahamians, due to that lifestyle I mentioned that was created, that appetite that was created, and we didn't have the income to supply it, we got very creative and going to number of institutions to borrow to meet certain needs and wants that we had. Well, under this new system that we have today, we have a credit record, which is capturing all of your credit data. And we'll have another conversation later on this platform where we talk about the credit bureau in greater in-depth and insight. But I want to focus on debt management more so. And then we had the credit history. We had a credit report, and more importantly, to this date, we now have credit scores. Believe it or not. I can say to you, by the credit bureau which was selected today, you can go on their website and you can request every year a free credit report. A free credit report. Now, I won't go into all of the details in regards to why this is better and all of those wonderful things. Like I said, I want to focus more on the debt management side. But I'll say this in regards to the credit bureau. Commercial banks that are authorized under certain legislations, insurance companies, financial corporate service providers, credit unions, the Bahamas Mortgage Corp, the Bahamas Development Bank, and many other institutions designated by the central bank, all are mandated to provide credit information to the credit bureau. Those who are given by invitation, such as utility companies, our court system can all supply information as well. Well, last thing I want to say about the credit bureau before we move on to the debt management strategies, at the end of the day, be mindful that the central bank supervises the credit bureau. Now let's get back to debt management. So, credit score. What is your credit score made up of? Well, 35% of it is your payment history. The next 30% is the amounts you currently owe. 15% is the length of your credit history. 10% is new credit. And the last 10% is the type of credit. What about your credit? So that's your credit score. We're talking now about credit history. In regards to credit history, these are the things that negatively impact your credit history: late payments, arrests, defaults, outstanding adverse court judgments, bankruptcies, debts that are written off. And then what possibly affected it: accounts balances and types, credit limits, total amount of, and the types of loans, credit commitments, the utilization and the repayment of the credit card, changing borrowing limits, guarantees, and the list goes on and on and on and on. So be mindful of these things. So when it comes down to now, why we should pay it off, why we should make sure that we're in good standing in regards to our credit, how we should use and interact with that, we are now in a new system for banking. And we want to put ourselves in the best position possible that we will be considered low risk, we can have better terms with our financial institution, and more importantly, we will utilize the debt correctly. But there's a couple of things that we got to take a look at. I'm a Bahamian, and I speak to Bahamians daily. And I have, this is a short list, there's more should be on this list, but for right now, we're going to only look at these seven. There's seven things I have observed, and I would advise Bahamians we got to break the bad cultural habits that we have in regards to debt and credit. The first thing we need to do is pay off all of your debts in full as regards to your credit card. Do not leave any balance monthly. Before that due date, make sure that payment is paid off in full. We have this common money myth in our society where we believe you got to leave a little something on the bill. I don't know who created it. I don't know why it is created, but I am saying to you, you want to make sure that that thing is paid off completely. I'm referring to your credit cards. Don't co-sign or guarantee. Well, I'll tell you this much. In the months to come, as the economy starts to take on and rebound, more and more people will be targeted by financial institutions to borrow. Some of them will not qualify due to their credit score and their credit history. And they may require you, yes, I'm talking about you are watching this broadcast, to co-sign with them. Just remember, if the bank is requiring them to co-sign, they're alerting you that they are high risk. And I'll tell you what I've seen in our society: persons who co-sign, not all the time, but in a large number of cases, are stuck holding the bag. They're stuck holding the auto loan bag, the consumer loan bag, the consolidation bag, the mortgage bag, the student loan payment bag. They're stuck holding it. What I mean by stuck holding the bag, the person who took out the loan, they will pay it. They'll pay it when things are going good. But the minute things go bad, they stop paying. And the bank, they come to you and they look for you to pay it. At that moment, you can't tell them, well, I only co-signed to help them. No, you are as obligated as your colleague, your friend, your family member. So be careful who you co-sign with. I'm saying avoid it unless you are in a committed marriage relationship, or it is a commitment in regards to a venture that you and that person is doing together. Outside of that, limit that. Don't continue to borrow over 60% of your income. This is a big one in our society. Like I said before, keep in mind, incomes in our society, depending on the sector you work in or the company you work for, are relatively low. They are relatively low. Right now in the public service, the average person is making between $15,000 to $26,000 per annum. And so when you start taking away deductions, you realize very quickly how easy it is to go north of the 60% of your income. I am saying to you, try to avoid it. It was so bad almost 2 decades back that they had to implement a policy that still stands today that helped public service workers, that is, not go over the 60%. It was so bad, 1/3 of the government's payment was going strictly to salary deductions. I don't know even what the number is today, but I'm sure it's above one third. I am saying to you, if you could avoid it, let's avoid it. Don't increase new debt or apply for unnecessary credit cards for anything that is a liability, anything that is for entertainment, and last but not least, anything that is just strictly for consumption. Because at the end of the day, when you use it and you acquire with a liability, entertainment, or consumption, the bill sticks with you for years and sometimes even months. And at the end of the day, it attacks the cash that you have month over month that allows you to do less with your life. Be careful. Be very careful not to engage in those type of activities. Neglect to make payments or even inform the agency of your current situation. We are in a country that tourism and financial services are easily affected from external factors. Today it could be open, tomorrow it could be closed. Today you're working full time, then tomorrow you are on call. And so you need to let these financial institutions know so that they can make arrangements so you're not adversely affected. Paying your bills on time and paying it consistently and paying it in full. Like I said, that there is a money myth out there that believe you should not, under any circumstance, pay it off in full. You got to leave a little something there. I'll tell you what, talk to those persons and find out how much that little something is, because over time that becomes a big something. So big that those institutions that they are interacting with sometimes threaten to cut them off or cut off the supply or reduce whatever access they have in regards to resources, or even sometimes repo it. So don't follow behind those who are broke. Don't follow behind the broke, because broke only leaves you to broke. Last but not least, the restructuring of debt to improve your ability to meet your obligations. If you can, do it. But do it with the end in mind in regards to getting out. Don't do it just to move the loans from one side of your pocket to the other side of your pocket, because at the end of the day, it's still in your pocket. It's still there. Now, before we talk about debt reduction strategies, and I know I promise I'm going to give it to you, and I know time is of the essence, but I want to say this to you. There are four schools of thought. And with the four schools of thought, there's different views in regards to debt, how we should interact with it. And I want to lay down some very clear ground rules. For one school of thought, those who are expense management, they teach being frugal, the Dave Ramsey, the Susie Orman, and your local professional banker. How you got to cut back and save, and you got to be on a budget. And I believe that, and I preach that myself as well. But at some point in time, there's only so much you can cut back. You may have to increase what is coming in. And that leads me to the next group of people, the Robert Kiyosaki, Grant Cardone, Warren Buffett, and other local successful businessmen who you interact on a daily basis. They will tell you about income generation and utilizing that debt to make calculated risks. The same thing that Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman will tell you not to use debt for and why it's bad is the same thing that this group of people will tell you, no, don't get in debt for those purposes or those reasons. Use the debt for a particular reason. And then you have the next group, productivity and positivity. It's all about your output. The Eric Thomas of the world, Napoleon Hill, Rich Dad, Think and Grow Rich, Gary V, your sales manager, your local high school teacher. And then you have the last group would teach balance and alignment. Tony Robbins, Oprah, your local pastor. At the end of the day, you have to be one in all areas and making sure all areas are in balance. Like I said, the first group, being frugal. Second group, calculated risk. The next group, output. Last but not least, alignment. So how do you take all of these schools of thought and make proper sense of that? Well, here's the thing. The difference in their philosophy is just the usage. Dave says get out of it because no debt is good. At the end of the day, you owe someone, and you should get quickly out of that arrangement. The next group is simply saying this: if you're going to use debt, use it as a way of leveraging wealth creation opportunities, and only for that. There's no exceptions to this rule. And I agree with him. And then you have also, many of them would agree, that is an enslavement. If there's no proper plan for repayment Or are you acquiring an asset that is appropriate, that is generating either cash flow or is appreciating in value? Last but not least, the secret is this: just having the right perspective and how it interacts with your personal life and your current situation and what you're going to do in the future. So, what do you need to do? You need to use debt to either buy an asset that appreciates in value or produce extra cash flow or does both or help you get a home. Any other purpose for that, I will say to you, it may fall under the category of liabilities, consumption, or it may fall under entertainment. You got to be very careful for that. I'm not referring to upskilling yourself. That is something good. But outside of that, be careful not to use money for things that depreciate in value. 12 lies why people don't want to become debt free, or people love staying in debt, especially getting debt that doesn't help them, because debt is normal. Money is complicated. You'll never make enough, so it don't make sense trying to even live debt free. The sacrifice isn't worth it. I don't believe in those budgets, and I don't believe in putting restrictions on myself. I don't believe in that freedom. Look here, I believe about going out and looking your best. I want it, and I want it now, and I'm gonna live my life now. Not using debt, scary is a scary lifestyle change. For some people, getting out of debt is not a priority. You don't need debt, or you and your spouse to be on the same page if in regards to the difference in opinion how debt should be used. Look here, credit cards are for emergency purposes. And last but not least, it's just not possible. These are the reasons why most people say, you know what, I'm comfortable with my debt and I want to keep it. But here's what I'm saying to you. You want to get out any debt that is not helping you in life. And once you get out of that first, then transition yourself to use that to help you acquire assets that either produce cash flow, appreciate in value, or does both. So what do you need to do to assess your debt? The first thing you need to do is look at your current interest rate. See how much you owe. What is the minimum monthly payment? How long it will take to satisfy this loan? See if that financial institution is willing to reduce that interest rate. You'll be shocked and amazed that some of your interest rates are adjustable, meaning that as the economy changes, they may be inclined to reduce the interest rate. That might reduce the monthly payment. You will never know unless you contact them. And if they have any specials in terms of how to quickly get out of it. Also, when you're going to pay off your debt, be mindful that there are restrictions or payment penalties. So you want to sit down with the person who supplied you with the loan and find out what they are. There might be restrictions that you have to wait 5 years before you can even start a repayment or an extra payment. And for some other persons, if you make too large of a payment, there's a payment penalty. So you need to find that out. And many of your financial institutions, the more experienced ones, will be glad to share with you. So make sure you're dealing with somebody who's experienced. And if you have some trouble, call us at Drewber. We'll help you. So there are 4 debt management strategies and how quickly to reduce it. These are my closing points. If you have any questions, just type them inside the chat for me. The first one is the debt snowball, made popular by Dave Ramsey. And all he's simply saying is this: you write down all of your debt from lowest to highest, and you're going to put them in the order of balance. The lowest balance first, the second lowest, and you go all the way down until you get to the highest. You make minimum payments on all with the exception of the lowest balance. And you can take all the extra money that you have. And if there isn't no extra money, you're going to generate that through the side hustle and the part-time job. And you're going to apply all of it to the lowest balance. And at the end of the day, you're going to pay that thing off. And then you're going to work your way down the list until you pay all of your debt off. Now, this goes against math. But what it does do for somebody who's looking for gratification and a quick win, they're looking to stay motivated. They're not good with money and they're afraid to know what their financial situation is. This is the best method for you. It will be done in time and it will be done at the pace of your effort. And I would say, I know it's scary. You don't want to know where you stand. You don't want to know how bad or how much loans you have. But if you write it down from the lowest balance to the highest, attack that lowest one and work your way down that list, you will have the momentum, the energy, and the effort to see it through. Now, the avalanche method, which is completely different. You're going to take all your debts and you're going to put them on a list from the highest interest rate to the lowest interest rate. You're going to make minimum payments on all, with the exception of the highest interest rate. And you control all the extra money you have to the highest interest rate one and work your way down. This is perfect for persons who are motivated. They don't need no quick wins. This is also for persons who have one debt that is significantly higher in interest rate than the others. And these high interest rate will cost you extra money each month. If you eliminate the highest interest rate first, then you'll have extra money to pay off the other debts. So if you fall in this category, this method is good for you. Believe it or not, Robert Kiyosaki preaches get out of debt as well. And he says this: organize your debt from the highest payment amount to the lowest, with the exception of real estate. Make minimum payments to all, with the exception of the highest payment amount, and throw all you have against that and work your way down that list. This is perfect for somebody who on a tight budget and they have no wiggle room with no extra money. So when the highest payment is done or it's free, it frees up and offers liquidity, flexibility, and even breathing room to deal with life's unexpected mishaps. Last but not least, my good friend, Kelso, she calls it the emotional baggage method. This is the debt where you're going to arrange them all, but you're going to target the one that make you feel sick to your stomach. This is perfect for someone who has a bad relationship, all because they're not making repayments. You want to deal with that debt first and potentially move to one of the other three methods after that major debt that causes all the emotional baggages is over. Trust me, each one of these debt reduction strategies, they're worth it, they work. I myself have deployed the first one, the debt snowball, in my own life to become debt free. And if I can do it, my team can do it, and all the people I've worked with who are debt free today, they can do it. And we're all Bahamians, you can do it as well. And trust me, ALIV believes in you because they believe in BEST. And you can do this as well. That brings me to the end of my presentation. I know we're out of time and there's so much more that I can share. But if you have some questions, please drop that inside the chat for me. And I will take a few of your questions before we come to an end. Okay. Any questions? Anyone with any questions or any comments in regards to the session, just drop it in the chat. Thank you so much. So if you're catching the replay or you're watching it right now, and if you want some more information about me and my team, please contact us at drewbersolutions.com, schedule an appointment, and we will be glad to talk with you. Outside of that, I hope you enjoy the financial wellness session by ALIV in partnership with Drewber Solutions. My name is Nathaniel. My topic today was debt management. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Oh, one quick question came in. Does the new credit bureau check the credit history from other countries? At this point in time, I will say no, they don't at this point in time. Will that remain the case? I can't say. But for right now, the answer is no. Any other questions? Any other question? Okay. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this session today, please comment on the under this link or in the chat. Let ALIV know that you enjoyed the session, or you can send in your emails, your messages directly to ALIV. Let them know we enjoy the financial wellness series. We enjoy the physical and fitness series, and we want to see more. Because remember, at the end of the day, ALIV believes in BEST. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed my time here with you guys today, and I want to see you guys succeed in your financial life. Thank you so much, and see you soon.